Hello and welcome to a very special video, everybody. Today I'm going to tell you why I think the new Saturnine Terminators are just a re-attempt at the Centurions of editions past. And it really comes down to a couple things. They're a unit of 3. They're a really large, overly power-armored guy. They're effectively in a I'd say downscaled mech suit, effectively. Considering how big Saturnine are compared to normal Marines, it's very similar to how a Centurions being Assault, or the other word, Devastator or Assault Centurions. I always forget that part. Being very, very similar to that. I believe they're probably going to be on about the same size of base, but the similarities go a little bit further. Now, of course, the weaponry is not quite the same, but it kind of follows the same kind of routes. But let's just talk stats for a moment. Now, in 7th edition, because I have my 7th edition core codex right here. I could call it core book. I don't know what to talk about some days. And I was looking at it and going, oh my lord, these have some really close similarities. So, as we see with these stats in here, the weapon skill and ballistic, WS and BS, are exactly the same. The strength is, oddly enough, 1 less than the Centurions, which the Centurions have a strength of 5, Saturnine of 4. Toughness, they actually have more toughness by 1 point, the Saturnine do. And they have 1 more wound, of course. Initiative score, they are 1 slower, so Centurions have 4, Saturnine a 3, and actions, they have 1 more across the board. Now, from a unit perspective, let's say Assault Centurions were about 165 points for 3, and of course the Saturnine are 200. Now, for adding 3 additional Saturnine Terminators, I believe it is 60 points per model, and the Centurions are 55 points. They have, of course, special rules. They have the very bulky for Centurions, just bulky 4 that they have there, and they have slow and purposeful. Now, they also have implacable advance, which, depending on how you consider, move through cover is kind of similar. Not exactly, but besides the explode 6, which feels like it would be more on the giant mech suit than the oversized power armor, considering that I think the Centurions were supposed to be bigger, because they're kind of like robots that Space Marines and power armor get into. So, but this is the thing. Looking at them, they have very similar ways of being done. They're 3-man units with very close to the same size, the same kind of base. I'm sure they're going to have about the same base size, and they kind of fill a similar role. I would say that the Saturnine Terminator squad we have before us is more of a middle ground between the Devastator and the Assault Centurion, considering they are a Terminator. But it's interesting to see this design philosophy go into things. And, of course, I'm going to comment on the Praetor for a moment. The Praetor is along the lines of what I would refer to as a baby Primarch. They are very interestingly statted. They're probably within reason, they're about as good as a normal, non-special Space Marine character could get. They've got an interesting weapon loadout from what they have choice-wise. I'm going to go with the axe because I like the axe, but I'm going to bet the hammer is just a better option overall, considering what we know about it. But I do find it interesting. I feel like the Saturnine had, in terms of design, basically looked at the Centurions and said, how can we take this concept, re-roll it into something, and proceed from there? And, it's not the worst thing they could do. I'm still very skeptical on Saturnine being added to the game. I like the fact that I had to remind myself that Marines are movement 7, because I was like, well, they're supposed to be slower than normal Terminators, and then I remembered the increase in movement. I don't think they're a bad thing. I don't think the Centurions were a awful idea. The problem ends up being is that if you start chasing power, you have to go to more and more ludicrous areas when it comes to design, and I'm very uncomfortable about that. I also have to continually ask the question, could we not have seen a revamp of the older Horus Heresy Terminator kits? I'm guaranteeing you, if they got scaled up, they would have sold like hotcakes. Is there not a bunch of other things that could have gone before this? Or just about anything? And I do understand we're getting breachers. I do understand that they are giving us Mark II finally, and that they've responded to a degree. It's just that this kit keeps making me come down to it and going, well, this reminds me of this thing from 7th edition. This reminds me of this thing from 7th edition. And with the combination of the Necromunda stats being added and increasing the length of things that you need to remember on a stat sheet, with the army construction rules, with all of these extras that we're getting, I keep looking at Saturnine and go, well, I see they're trying to refine a concept that they had from way back, from a lot of people remember. And that's not bad in and of itself. The problem is that it comes at a time where we have to look at a lot of the reasons why they're doing a number of things within the hobby. And considering that they seem to be changing a lot of rules, going with completely new design conceits in a lot of ways, adding Necromunda stats, and pushing Saturnine, when you go, what people really wanted and what they really should have done was just double down on fixing the Age of Darkness rules, refining them, reassuring that people were going to, of course, have a consistency, instead of going, hey, we're completely throwing all of that out because one of our guys on the rules team fancies Necromunda, and, well, we've seen people making Saturnine, so we wanted to have a product so we could more easily sue them or send cease and desist towards them because, reasons. And I don't know. It feels like they just won't give up on the Centurions, Devastator or Assault. So effectively, I just kind of noticed, am I the only person who noticed that they're going down this route of kind of taking this older idea and bringing it in? And am I the only one that just kind of goes, while I like Saturnine, I really do like Saturnine. I've always had a soft spot for the derpy armor that it is. The Turtle Terminator is the only more derpy one, in my opinion. I just keep coming down and going, why? Why are we doing this? What is this adding to the game other than giving a super heavy Terminator type option? And I could have gone, okay, well, having the Praetor and Saturnine Terminator armor, I'm actually okay with. Having it as the kind of baby Praetor. He's not really a Praetor. He's not really on the level of Praetor. But he kind of, for people who don't own a Praetor or just don't want to field one, because, you're like me and you're like, I don't want to use named characters. I want to use my own and tell my own story. I thought hey, that would be fantastic. It looks, from what I can see, reasonably alright. Well, I don't know much about the newer editions, how it's going to play, and I'm going to have to come to grips with that. I like the idea of that kind of option for people who are like, I don't want to fill the Praetor, or I don't want to fill a Primarch. I want to fill the Praetor, and I want him to be my guy, and I want to have at least a kind of fighting chance. I'm okay with the Saturnine squad itself, let alone the Saturnine Dreadnought, bother me because I sit there and go, I don't see where this fills any of the things that people were asking. It should have been a Breacher squad. It just should have. It just should have been a Breacher squad, and these guys should have been something that came out in another edition, a later edition, when we have more of the, all right, these are the things that people need for their armies. We have corrected all of these mistakes. Now we're going to start adding some wild stuff in there just for hell of it. I can appreciate Saturnine. I like the idea the Praetor might come in like a decently posable manner. And I like the Saturnine Terminators themselves. And I even kind of like that weird Dreadnought. But I will admit, I am concerned that we're reaching into 7th edition for something that really wasn't filling a role that people were desperately asking for. And we're facing an edition that is doing a lot of changes that just don't seem to be something that the community as a whole are hungry for. I mean, let me know if you disagree, if you've watched this far, you poor person. I do have a lot of concerns because I really have always liked Horus Heresy. I remember reading the White Dwarves when they were starting to ramp up towards talking about it. I remember looking at the models as a guy that was effectively with no money, sitting there just looking at these magazines going, holy cow, look at how cool that is. And it's been a part of my life for many, many years, and I want people to have the best product possible. And I really don't want to get edged out of one of my favorite hobbies, but I'm having a lot of trouble with this one. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think that they are just Centurions dressed up? Do you think that I'm just too concerned that they're mashing in parts of Necromunda? Because I do like Necromunda. Do you think that all of these additions and changes are going to make a better game? Let me know, and you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.